Hi there, it's Neil here at Half Empty Brewing once more, bringing you another Homebrew Wednesday. Didn't bring one last week because I didn't really have much to report, and it was half term for school, so spending a bit of time with the family. It's going to probably be another brief one this week, only really to report that I'm doing another brew today. I'm currently in the sparging stage. I'll show you my primitive setup. I've got my boiler here, which has got my sparge water at the temperature required, and here's my picnic cooler mash tun setup. If I show you here, try not to get too close, otherwise the camera will steam up. But I don't know if you can see in there the grain being sparged. As I say, it's a very primitive setup. I need to build myself a proper copper sparge arm. However, this process has worked perfectly for me, so I'll keep going for now. And then down here is where I'm catching my wort ready for the boil. I'm about halfway through the sparge, and that's about it. So this brew here is an oatmeal stout. First oatmeal stout I've done. Fairly standard recipe, although I'm considering putting in some maple syrup to make it a maple oatmeal stout. I've got some maple syrup that I need using up, so I thought, you know, maple syrup tends to go well with porters and stouts, so I'll give it a bash. I'm not really expecting to have a nice sweet maple flavour. I tend to add the maple syrup for about the last 5 minutes of the boil, so we'll see what comes out with that. That'll be it for now. I'll perhaps give you a couple of little more shows of the brew day as we go along. Okay, so we're just getting to the end of the sparge now. I'll show you what's going on. If you look here, it's obviously starting to dry out now. All the sparge water's gone through. Now you'll notice, or you may have noticed, that I only have one boiler. I don't have a separate hot liquor tank. It's one of these brew pack boilers that you can see there. So what I have to do is I sparge into a separate fermenting bucket here. Once the water has left all the sparge water has left the boiler, I then pour some of it into the boil kettle. So there's currently 23 litres in there, and then I'm sparging the rest of it into this bucket just so that I can read a level, but I'll be looking for about 28 and a half litres. Once this is finished in here, I'll transfer it all into the kettle. Now, one of the issues that I have with my Brewpack's kettle is that it's just not quite big enough for the batch size that I brew. Now, I could adjust the recipe accordingly, but obviously I would then make less beer. When this takes about 29 litres and it's full almost to the brim. Now obviously that's a recipe for disaster with boilovers and what have you. So what I do is, once I've measured my boil size, I'll then take about 2 to 2.5 litres out and just put it in a sanitised saucepan, which I will keep on the heat. And what I've found is, once I get past the hot break just at the start of the boil, and I add my first addition of hops, it's enough for me then to pour the remaining 2 to 2.5 litres that I've got left here, and I can avoid having any boilovers. It seems to do the trick. So when I get to that point, I'll show you some pictures anyway and see what's going on. It looks like my sparge is about done now. Looking like another 5 litres. So I'll come back to you shortly. Okay guys, so I finished the sparge and got the entire contents of the wort now into my boil kettle. As you can see, I'm full to the brim. So that's 29 litres in there. I've got the boiler switched on to start warming it up and getting it to boil, but as you would imagine that's going to boil over if I leave it that way. So as I said earlier, I'll take 2 litres or so out of that, put it in a sanitised saucepan, and then once I've got to the hop break and my boil starts, I'll add my first hop additions, and then I can return the 2 litres back. That should be sufficient to stop any boilovers. Obviously I'll monitor it anyway, but this is brew number 25 and I haven't had any boilovers yet, so I'm pretty confident that it won't happen again. Okay, I'll show you when I get to the boil stage. Okay guys, as you can see now, I've now transferred to my outside brewery. I like to put my boil kettle outside. Not so much for the smell in the house, it's really for the condensation that builds up. As you can see, the boil is just about going now. This is with 2 litres taken out of the pre-boil volume. So I will add my first hop addition, which is about 25 grams of Challenger hops. Give that a stir. Alright, I'll just pause that for a moment. So I just started my boil timer. It's a 70-minute boil today, and here I've got the other 2 litres of water, which I'm now going to add back into the boil kettle. It's looking a bit risky, but I'm confident that it won't overboil. But I'll keep an eye on it. Obviously, given time, some of that volume will evaporate anyway. Just a point about these brew packed boilers, they're quite good, but they're a bit slow to get to a boil. Once they're at a boil, it keeps the roll of the boil going pretty well. But unfortunately, if you want to make a full 5-gallon batch, or in my case I'm looking at about 22 litres of beer, it's always a struggle to get the full pre-boil volume all in the kettle. So I will look to upgrade at some point. I think I'll probably buy a larger boil kettle and use this as my hot liquor tank, or I might even consider selling this and making myself 2 vessels, one for hot liquor and one for boiling. But it's served my purposes well so far, and I'll continue to use it for the time being. Okay, I'll give you another update as we progress. Okay guys, we're getting towards the end of the boil now. I'll just give you a quick shot. As you can see, the level has gone down considerably now. I've just gone past the 15-minute stage. I've got my wort chiller in, and the Irish moss has gone in as well. I'll quickly take you into the kitchen area, where I have got my final set of ingredients. I've measured out my maple syrup. This is all sanitised equipment, by the way. And then there's my final hop addition to go at flame out, which is these Kent Goldings and some more Challenger. As for the yeast, then this is my US-05, which I'm putting in today. Now what I do with my yeast is rehydrate it. I've only been using dried yeast at this point, which I rehydrate. So again, sanitised equipment. I boiled up some water, let it cool down to about 23 degrees, 24 degrees, something like that, and then I've simply just sprinkled the US-05 yeast on top. I will leave that for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then with a sanitised spoon I'll give it a stir periodically. So at the moment I'm about an hour, maybe just over an hour or so away from pitching the yeast. So by the time I've let that stand and then give it a periodic stir, it should be good to go. Again, it's simple stuff. I think over time I'll probably get myself a proper flask and make myself a stir plate and do things a bit more efficiently, but it just proves that you can do something quite simple. You don't need all the fancy gizmos and you can still make great beer. This process has been fail-safe for me, and had any problems. Okay, that's the timer gone, and it's time for flame out and add the final hop additions. So we'll go down there, turn off the boiler, and here goes some East Kent Goldings and some Challenger hops. Stir. Get that prepared for chilling. Okay guys, we are now chilling. I've now brought the boil kettle indoors. You'll excuse me for not showing you that bit. Whilst I can do camera work one-handed, it's not so easy lifting up 5 gallons worth of wort. I think if I increase my brew size to doing bigger batches, I'm going to have to find a different method. Anyway, here's the pre-wort chiller that you may have seen. I think it was Homebrew Wednesday number 7. If you look back to that one, you'll find a little bit more detail on that. And I'm catching some water in my mop bucket, ready for cleaning later. Okay, I'll give you another update when we pitch the yeast. Okay guys, that's the chilling over. It took me about half an hour to get it down to about 25 degrees. So I'm now transferring the cooled down wort into my fermenting vessel. As you can see, I'm just letting it gravity do its bit, and in the process it's aerating the wort ready for pitching the yeast. It does get a little bit out of control after a while, but I just move it around a bit to control those bubbles. And also by the time that's transferred into the fermenting vessel, the wort would have cooled another 2 or 3 degrees, so it will be ideal for pitching temperature at about 22 degrees, something like that. And this is the point where I'll find out my batch size. Okay guys, so we're down to the final step now, pitching the yeast. I managed to get 23 litres out of that batch. I've aerated the wort, got the yeast up here, just give it another quick stir. That's been rehydrating for the past hour or so. Pitch that yeast in there, USO 5. Sanitised spoon. Just encourage that, give it a bit of a stir. And there you have it. Sanitised lid. Put that in place. I can do this. No, hold on a minute. And there's the airlock in place already. I took a gravity reading. I hit 1050, which is exactly what I was after. So that should yield about 5.2% beer. Quick taste. I find tasting the water at this stage always a bit strange, to be honest. But there's nothing unusual. I can sort of taste a little bit of maple, but I'm don't expect there to be too much maple flavour with the finished product. But I'll keep you updated and let you know how it goes. All it remains now is to set my fermentinator up to 21 degrees, I think, for this one, and put that in place. And that'll be the end of my Maple Oatmeal Stout Brewday. Cheers.